Okay. Zoning Board of Appeals, you're live back on the air. We had a technical difficulty. We are now back and you're being recorded.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Bit of a power outage, as many of you probably witnessed. Okay, so we're getting back now online and on the air for the Tourmalet LLC at 250 Old Montauk Highway. We've spoken with the applicant's agents, with their engineer with regard to the construction protocol. Joel, did you have someone else you wanted to speak, or you're muted?
I think everybody that was on the line has left by now.
Okay.
So I didn't think there was much more needed to be said.
Yeah, we can come back with some questions we may have. So let's go to Brian. Let's go to the planning department, Brian Frank. Good evening, Brian. Have I sworn you in? No, I have not sworn you in. If you please, Brian, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do.
Okay, go ahead, Brian, please.
Brian Frank, on behalf of the planning department, I reviewed the application, and as you've gathered from member Johan's presentation, from the comments that the engineer Vinny Gaudiello was in the process of making when we lost power, really the biggest issue with this application is the extent of grading. I'm going to switch back to the aerial for this area, and just to kind of remind you where you are. These are the two projects under construction right now that were visible in member Johan's photos. This is Plata, and I believe the current name of this is Drucker McCombs. We talked about the driveway, the circuitous driveway that begins here at 242 Old Montauk Highway. It crosses two properties. This is, I think the number is 246. This is the property we're discussing this evening, 250 Old Montauk Highway. Then it crosses back onto 246 and serves 242, which was the subject of a redevelopment a couple of years ago, several years ago, was approved and recently completed. So one of the major issues with this application, or I should say, this is Old Montauk Highway. This is the only area in town where coastal setbacks are measured from the toe of the coastal feature instead of the crest of the coastal feature. And part of the reason for that is pretty obvious on these properties, is really the natural bluff crest, the actual top of the bluff, wildly meanders in some places, and in a lot of places the natural crest is north of the property boundary. So you can tell from the topography, this around the 85 foot contour line was used as the bluff crest back in the old approval on what is Drucker now. The property that we're talking about, Tourmalet, really doesn't have any flat area that isn't an improved surface. There is a significant change of elevation here. The elevations, there are more accurate contours on the Rayner site plan, but the numbers may show up a little better on the screen here. So I'm using the aerial for the time being. You can see the elevation is, this is the 110 foot contour line near where the driveway apron meets the street. The first floor elevation of the residence and the natural contour, this is about the 85 foot contour line. And if I remember correctly, I think the first floor elevation of the house is about 81.5 feet above sea level. So, we're talking about over a 30 foot change in elevation from the road to the building site. The interior of the building site, the fat part of the lot, for lack of a better term, is disturbed. It is an improved property. There is a canopy there of native trees, of oaks and black cherries, and the understory is largely landscaped. The importance of the construction protocol here really can't be overemphasized. Poor construction practices could result in massive soil erosion, runoff onto neighboring properties, and flooding on neighboring properties as well. a construction protocol is only as good as the people that are on site following it. We have seen some examples of construction protocols that have been ignored. Fortunately, in this area, there has been, in my opinion, pretty strict adherence to the construction protocol that was approved on Pla de Te. We've gotten regular updates from the GC and the project manager as to the status of the project as it's evolved over the years, and it's crucial that continues on this property. When you look at the site plan, you can tell the edge of the swimming pool is very close to the driveway that services 242, and this driveway is the only access to 242. This is the only way to get to the property, and it really is important that that good sediment control, that good site stability, and diligent excavation and movement of the fill that is cut on this property is conducted. The other issue I do want to bring to your attention, and I'm going to go back to the aerials is to show you this walkway, which is really kind of a minor issue on the Tourmalet property. It is primarily on the Pla de Te property, but the two structure, it's one structure functioning together. This had been the location of mostly unimproved footpaths. What you've seen commonly going back to really as far back as the 60s is the equivalent of railroad ties or 4x4s or 6x6s set in grade to kind of make steps that go down the face of the bluff. And you can kind of see an example of this on this pedestrian easement that provides access from 246. This is fairly common, and there was a version of that in this footpath that was serviceable before the walkway was constructed. This is a wooden hillside. This walkway will, if it remains, require a coastal erosion hazard area permit, but it is generally the planning department's recommendations that structural alterations should be limited to those that are the minimum necessary to provide safe pedestrian access. And if you can have safe pedestrian access without a structure like this, it should really be considered. If you do grant it on these properties or this property, then a board is expected to handle similar circumstances on similar properties similarly. And I don't know if proliferation of walkways like this throughout the Old Montauk Highway area is a change that that is appropriate for the neighborhood, especially when there was safe access without it. It may be appropriate to leave some sections of staircases, but the board is going to be making a decision on Tourmalet probably before Pla de Te comes back for any type of modification. So because the structure goes across the property line, I think it kind of forces you to consider the whole structure, even though it's only a small area that's on the Tourmalet property now. I don't know that I have too many other comments to offer. If there's anything else in the file I can bring up, I do have both the full building plans available, or I did before we lost power. I can get them back. And the elevation plans that were revised to kind of show a little bit more detail about the property's relationship to both finished and final grade. If I bring them up, you'll see that a significant portion of the structure will be below finished grade. Maybe I should.
Yeah, would you please, Brian?
Sure.
Thank you. And I had one question that Roy may also. I really didn't see the floor plans yet. I know, but I know there's that lower basement, and I'm sure they've allowed for two means of egress, and I didn't see that in these sections. So maybe Roy, these plans might clarify it, especially the floor plan. You see the game room right there on the lower level. I don't see any two means of egress on any of these drawings for that. They might be in the plans though.
This is the view. I think they're both views of the west side of the house facing east. You can see where the swimming pool is. Oh no, I apologize. This is the view facing west.
Right.
Whichever one you want to leave up, I'm happy to do.
I think this view actually is not that, Brian. I think this is a section looking, towards the ocean with regard to the pyramid, because you don't see any of this.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah. It's either looking towards the ocean or up or away from the ocean, but it's a cross section.
Now, this must be the eastern, I assume this is the eastern property line.
That's what I would think.
And we're facing north.
Exactly. Whereas if you go back to the next one, you saw that it was cut through the topography there. You see the grade sloping down there.
So this is the feature that they're using for natural grade, where the height measurements came from, and this is the finished grade they're proposing.
Yeah. Yeah, if you could keep scrolling, I'd just be curious on seeing the plans and elevations, just so we all see what the structures, how it sits into the land or is proposed to.
Oops. This is the view on the other page.
So therefore, that shows one stair going up. There's one means of egress right there with the center stairwell. And there may be an access to the east side of the two outdoors. I'm thinking possibly.
I didn't see them on the plan, but
do you have the floor plans? Is that hard to get, Brian, or do you have them available?
It's not, but the floor plans are not. I'll bring them up. They're not going to show up well on the screen. The level of detail is
yeah.
But I'll bring them up and you can see what how much value they have.
Mm-hmm. I think I saw something in that excavation that leads me to believe it's a stairwell on the east side.
Oh goodness!
There we go. Oh, those are fairly clear. What floor is that?
That's what I was looking to get to, the label.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be down there. Yep. Okay, we have the, oh, you lost it.
Yeah, well, it hops over.
You just,
this is the second floor.
okay, that's what I wanted to say. That's the second floor, right? Right.
Did you want to see the lower floor?
Yeah, if you have it there. Yeah, I was just concerned how they're getting out of that basement. I think it might be on the east.
This is the site plan.
That's the site plan, yeah.
Here's the first floor. This is the gym level. This
yeah, then there's a level
below this.
Yeah, so there's stairwells there on two sides there. And now we just need the lower level. I mean, on one side. Almost there. There we go. That's it. Okay, hold that, please. Yeah. Anyway, that's something that's going to have to be addressed because they obviously have a home theater. I can't believe. Andy, do you have any comments on that, or Joel? You need two means of egress there. Andy, are you available? You're on mute, maybe.
Okay, good. I was just unmuted. Joel's actually calling the project architect. We agree that this plan does not depict the proposed access very clearly. You know, we'd ask the board just to be able to depict it on a future plan. I think they were focusing on more trying to get the footprints right, but didn't show the actual access. But I agree, this definitely needs two means of egress. And I see a stairwell, but I don't see the other means of egress.
Yeah.
And it's even hard to look at, on the plan itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we'll submit a revised sheet that shows the access.
No, right now.
Okay, board members, any questions for Brian?
Yeah, is there a concern having a kitchen at this lower level at all, Brian, as in terms of safety or?
That's a better building department question than something that relates to the natural resource special permit standards.
This was brought up with the fire marshal and they had no issue with it.
And the building department.
And, yeah. Well, the building department sent me to the fire marshal. I went to the fire marshal was fine.
Yeah, with the kitchen, but you need 2 means of egress.
Yes, we will get the second means of egress.
Brian, while we're waiting, can you just go to the first floor for a second? I don't want to beat a dead horse, but board members, any other questions for Brian?
Well, I'm going to have to finish this, John. I'm going to have a question about.
Yeah, I'd like to look at that first floor really quickly because it. Okay. Just hold it right there, please, without moving it or scroll up a little bit. Okay, I see a stairwell in the back. I don't know what that is. Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, it's not a simple issue, obviously, considering the site. So that's going to have to be dealt with. But go ahead, please, Ed. I'll just drop it and leave it at that. Go ahead, please, Ed.
No, I just wanted to go back if we could. I know you're doing all this juggling for us here, Brian, but to that aerial photo for a second. I was wondering if you could, thank you. If you could comment for us about the proposed easement, can you show us how you consider that being drawn on this particular?
Yes, that the easement that's been recommended by the planning department and I believe offered by the applicant is about 190 feet from the toe of the bluff. And lines up. Actually, let me say I had a better aerial. This one is old because you can see that Plata is not under construction here. So that easement line, this is the approximate location. Just south of this is the easement line that was established on Plata, and that would match the easement. That elevation or that location would be matched on the Tourmalet property, where this strip would be in a scenic easement and required to be maintained in a natural state. That doesn't mean that you couldn't have an unimproved footpath in through a scenic easement. The town allows that, and is expected on these waterfront properties, whether it's a dune, a bluff, or Old Montauk Highway bluff.
Right.
But this would be approximately the location of that easement boundary. It may be on the site plan if you want me to bring that up.
No, that's fine. I want to just, because this makes it obvious now, the driveway that gives access to the house that's below is going to be passing through a portion of the easement. But what are the implications for future work on that driveway? What can and can't be done as it passes through the easement? What kind of improvements, resurfacing, that kind of thing? Are they going to be?
I think I think generally the easement would allow for the maintenance of the driveway and whatever that entails. If that means resurfacing, repaving, what happens? The purpose of the easement is to protect the natural vegetation that's closest to the toe of the bluff. There's obviously an improved surface in the driveway that bisects it, and it would be logical to just maintain that, repair it as necessary, reconstruct it if necessary.
Would the applicant would be the people who own the house below. Would they be called to come back in front of us to propose exactly how they were going to proceed with the improvements? I'm just wondering if we're asking them to now accept these regulations on this right-of-way driveway. It's a complicated legal issue, perhaps, but either way, I'm wondering what the implications are.
Well, I don't think the easement complicates it that much. The easement would make allowance for the maintenance of the driveway. And if 242 wanted to reconstruct their driveway, it would probably need a natural resources special permit anyway, regardless of whether an easement is established over the adjoining natural areas or not.
Okay. And then I'm sorry that we lost Rayner because, and I've been beating this dead horse, but I just have to say it, the house to the northwest is going to be particularly vulnerable to erosion and losing, some continuity, some of the structure that keeps them in place during construction. We see from the plan, the layout, we're using a lot of this property that's already disturbed and redoing it. So there's the concern about the right-of-way below and maintaining that. And there's the concern, I think, that could be a bit greater one, and that is the kind of retention that's going to be necessary to do this work and protect the house to the northwest. So I look forward to that being clarified. It will go through the protocols. Again, the protocols are a little bit general in this area, but it's because of this very steep grade that we see and the change of elevation. I would worry about sloughing off, some collapse, the kinds of things that could endanger the neighboring property. And one of the things we're watching for is how do we impact the property, so the neighbors. So this is a critical part of the decision making for me. I think the difference between this lot and the adjoining lots are the configuration of this lot. It's a lot narrower. The access to work on it is going to be a little more difficult. We can change grades coming from the north to the south, as was proposed by Rayner. That's actually a more difficult way to do this, probably the only way that can be done than coming from the south. So my question would have been, has it been considered to use the right-of-way? Is that part of a protocol? You probably can't answer that, Andy, but...
Can, actually.
You can?
I actually can answer that.
Thank
The
you.
right-of-way, meaning the driveway that is the property to the south.
Yeah. Yes.
We do not have rights over that because it originates on an adjacent property, which is the property to the northwest.
Yeah.
So we can control the right-of-way while it's on the four corners or actually 8 corners of our property on this one. However, we do not have the right to access to get down to that portion because it traverses and is a burdened property that is not owned by us. So that is the property to the northwest controls access to that right of way.
So you'll know then, because you've been on the property and you've done the examinations, our concern is if it's all being done from the north, that pool area, the retention wall right now, the 6x6 wall that retains the fill that allows the pool to exist as it is now, is basically right above this right of way. So
That's correct.
Will have to be done from above and have to be done extremely carefully not to cause a collapse onto what's there. I know this is stating the obvious, but this is a very sensitive spot. And it's the thing that jumps at you when you're there. It's not just the plan, it's the logistics of implementing the plan. How do we logistically complete this project? So that's on my concern when we look forward on this. I'm just stating it as a general condition of this site. A very concise retention plan and a construction protocol has to be in place before we think that we're not going to be causing potential collateral damage to the northwest and to the southwest as well.
I do believe our existing protocol does address that, but maybe not in the detail that you would like to see. The H frames and the timber bulkheads, et cetera. I certainly would have no problem with submitting a final construction protocol that would address that exact point, comprehensively on the site when we have all our engineer diagrams, et cetera. But, as a condition of the board's approval that we'd have to submit that and address those specific points. I'm sure if Vinny were on the call, he could probably do a fairly good job right now, but I think you're looking for real specifics as to how we're going to construct in that area and not jeopardize any of those existing improvements.
So let's plan. Sorry, I was going to say, I imagine that you agree. Let's just plan on that. Andy, if you could, because there's time, the written record will be open for a while. Go ahead, Joel.
I did speak to Vinny Goyal in depth about the protocol. And again, remember Johan is correct. It is, I don't want to say it's a basic protocol, but it could use some addendums to it. Vinny Goyal had stated that he'd be able to do a better job on a protocol, provided he had the construction documents. But the construction documents aren't going to be done until you're going to get an approval to build something on this property. So again, maybe that could be a condition of the building permit. Once the construction documents are done, or while the construction documents are in the process of being developed, Minigo Llc could also be doing the addendum to the building protocol, the protocol that would address your concerns.
Yeah, that gets us in a little chicken and egg thing, though, because we want to make sure we know we can retain these points and protect the adjoining properties before we give any approvals. And I think I'm talking about a site-specific detail, looking forward to looking at protecting the house to the northwest and understanding it. I understand that we have in the protocols here a general take on that. I think it'd be important if we had a site-specific attention based on those two locations. What we do to protect right away and what we do to protect to the house to the northwest.
Yeah, I think
we can do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Andy, I think considering the plans that we have here, you also have to deal with that second means of egress. But I would recommend that you take care of both of these things within the period of the written record being open. And if you need more time, you can always request the board, because I agree with Ed. We want this stuff before we make our decision.
Okay, that sounds perfectly reasonable to me.
Okay. Thank you. Ed, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Anything else, Ed?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, board members? Any other questions? Okay. Okay, LTV, do we have anyone in the public who wishes to comment on this?
No, Chair. There are no current callers on the phone.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then, Ed, would you like to close us out on this, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the application of Tourmalet LLC, 250 Old Montauk Highway, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-87-03-04, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing, but keep open the written record until 2 weeks after the transcript of this meeting has been posted on the town website.
I'll second that.
I'll concur.
And I concur. And Roy, you're
Roy.
muted, Roy.
Roy's
Roy's recused, John.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Thank you, Tim. Thank you. I beg your pardon. Okay, and I mentioned Roy earlier. My apologies. Okay, thank you all. Brian.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. I mean, good night, you all. We got work to do.
You still got another one. I'll see you later.
I'm leaving.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, thanks a lot. And Brian, thanks to you on that as well, Brian, Frank. Okay, we will move on now. Next, we have Cove Marina LLC at 364 Westlake Drive in Montauk, tax map number 300-12-1-4. The lot size and location, 154,913 square feet, including underwater land, at 364 Westlake Drive in Montauk. The description is the in-place reconstruction of 374 linear feet of bulkhead along the southern portion of the shoreline, increase the bulkhead height by approximately 5.5 feet, remove dilapidated concrete landward of the bulkhead, dredge within 10 feet of the bulkhead to a depth of 6 feet at mean low water to be used as backfill, and construct a split rail fence along the bulkhead on a parcel of land containing tidal surface waters. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-4-20 and a variance from 255-4-40 minimum wetland setbacks of the town code. An approximately 93-foot variance is required to locate the split rail fence 7 feet from surface waters, where 100-foot setbacks is required for structures. This is in a WF waterfront zoning district. The flood zone here is VE velocity elevation 8 and X flood zones. The secret class is unlisted. And council, do we have a proper affidavit of service and posting?
An affidavit that the mailings went out on the 22nd day of September and that the postings went up on the 22nd day of September. So the paperwork appears to be in order. And just reminder, Chair, our applicant on this one is joining us by telephone, not by Zoom.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So we now have, Ed, I believe, did you handle this one, Ed?
Yes, I did.
Can we make sure that he's on the line?
Oh,
So
yeah.
that we don't
Can
start
you-
it without him?
Yes, LTV, would you let in the agent or the
Excuse me,
applicant?
yes, Chair, I do see a caller. I'll have to open it up to see if that is who that is. The phone ends in 89. Oh, they just hung up. There are no callers at this moment. If you want the second they call back, if that's... Oh, yeah, look at that. They're back. I'm going to unmute
Okay.
that caller right now.
Thank you.
22nd day of September.
Hello?
Hello, caller. If
Hello?
you could please, before you identify yourself, this is the technician from the TV station. Please mute the broadcast in your home or office where you are and only communicate through the phone line so there's no echo.
Okay.
And then please identify yourself.
No problem. Thank you.
Oh, could you identify yourself, please?
Yes, this is John Perlman. I'm a resident of 246 Old Montauk Highway, which is the residence to the northwest of the Tourmalet residence.
Yeah,
of
you know, we
250
closed
Old
it.
Montauk Highway.
Okay, hold on,
Yeah,
sir.
I was on
We
the
closed
line.
that. No, hold on
Yeah,
a second,
I was
just so
on the
you
line
know.
waiting, and my call wasn't put through. I had been on the line for about 20 minutes waiting to put my question in.
Okay, please don't
Nobody-
interrupt me. Please don't interrupt me. I want to say something. We closed that public hearing. You have a couple of weeks to submit any written comments you have. We cannot take comments. That public hearing has been closed, but the written portion is
Well,
open.
I was on the line, and the operator did not put me through. Before
Excuse me, Chair.
Okay.
Just because I know you were trying to communicate, I had temporarily muted the caller so you could finish your sentence. And I would like to respond if you want to know at the time when you asked me if there was
Right.
any callers that person had called earlier, but they did hung up. And at the time you asked me, they were not present. So you're welcome
Well,
to
Counsel,
continue.
you'll agree, Counsel, I'm correct. We have to take this as a written comment, correct, Counsel?
Yes, we have to take it as a written comment, but he still can comment. It just needs to put whatever he wants to say in writing.
In writing, exactly, as can anyone else in the public. So, sir, I'm sorry that happened, but these are legal issues and we have to go by protocol. So please put all of your comments into writing and submit them, and every board member will certainly read those. So thank you, and I apologize for the technical difficulty there. Okay, let's go back.
And Chair, if I may interrupt, I do see, ironically, this person just hung up. Mr. Grimes, I know you're looking for, was just on the line the second I said he was, and now he's gone. But as soon as he comes in, I'll interrupt you and let you know that he's there.
Yeah,
That
you
was
can just
my fault. I called him because he hadn't been on the line. I just wanted to make sure he knew to call in, because with our confusion going down, it was a little tricky there. So I'm sure I just told him to call right back. So hopefully he will.
Okay, so let's move along. Ed, if you would, with your field report, please.
Yeah, is he on the line now? We really can't start without him being here.
Yes,
Okay.
this exact second. I'm going to unmute Mr. Grimes right this moment.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, I'm on the line.
Okay, thank you. Please stand by, and then you can introduce yourself after the field report, and when we're ready, and I will swear you in. Go ahead, Ed, please.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This property is on Westlake Drive, and here is the official notice out on the road. Next. I've turned here and looked to the south. This is looking back up towards Montauk Highway. Pretty open stretch of the road. We're fairly down. We're in the dock area, so we're fairly far north on the roadway on Westlake. Next. Now I've turned and looked the other way. I'm looking across the face of the property. You can see some hedges there that divide, that margin the parking lot from the roadway. Next. Now I've just turned, as you step into there, you can look off. There's a building here that's a restaurant, and there's a fairly good sized parking lot, which is used both for cars and sometimes for boat storage. Next. Now I'm turning and looking directly towards where they have a cradle boat launch. They can launch boats down there in that lower corner. That'll be an area part of our discussion. Next. Now I'm down near that. I'm down past where the restaurant is. We can see back across. We see here that there is some retention and some concrete wall there that comes along and helps with the change of grade from the restaurant area on down. There is a split rail fence of sorts here. It's a slat fence that runs along here to keep cars, I guess, off of that. Next. I'm looking across now. I've just stepped down. You can see the concrete to the left. I'm looking in what is basically here into the northwest, and beyond, we'll have another photo, but beyond is an area that was subject to an administrative application and approval for some work to be done to the northwest that was we discussed earlier in the year. Next. Come all the way over. You'll see that this is an area to be improved. This is there's some collapse of the dock. You can see it below where the picture is being taken, and it goes out to a far bulkhead on the far side. All of this area will be part of the improvements. Next. Just turning from there and looking out, this is an existing dock that is part of the marina and extends on out into the cove. Next. Another shot of that dock, just to get an idea of its size and its significance. It's a long structure, and it's pre-existing and has been there for a good long time. Next. Now I'm just standing in that same spot. You can see the engines from boats to the left, and I'm looking across, and this is the south wall that's going to be under the major parts of the discussion. All the way off in the distance, you can see the tent. That's part of at West Cove, where they have a restaurant, not West Cove, West Lake Marina, which they have a tent over there. There are a couple of residences that are associated with that property line that are behind the vegetation that we see there now. But this is the long line that'll be mostly discussed in terms of technique and what we're doing in terms of protocols. Next. I've moved my way over a little bit. Again, I'm looking out towards that tent. You can see a boat making its way towards us, and you can see that the launch ramp here, the cradle launch ramp, is immediately to my right. Next. Moving further over, just to give you an idea of the significance of this particular spot, there is what's going to show up on the survey as a dock, which is the far side of this opening here, where we see a piece of steel that helps act as a guide for the mechanism to roll back and forth, and some concrete improvements that are immediately under the tires in front of us. Again, they show up on the survey, and they're going to have some significance in our discussion. Next. Okay, I'm on the far side. Now I'm looking down along this whole south edge of what's going to be discussed. We're working our way all the way out. We see that boat I previously saw backing into its slip. The slips go beyond that. This is a long run. This is, as is noted in the TAM, this is a 376-foot improvement that's happening on the property. Next. I've worked my way a little further down, and there was a note that some distressed and dilapidated concrete is to be removed. This is a portion of that dilapidated concrete. You can also see that what was previously a bulkhead, which is now pitched and in disrepair. And we see some pilings on our right, which are stacked right on the edge of the property. Next. Just looking back across, give you an idea. You can see the bulkhead in front of me, the width of the area that we're discussing, and the nature, the character of what the marina and the location is. Next. Now I'm standing on top of these pilings here and looking my way out, and the significance is that I'm basically on the property line. The opening here, the cleared area, extends beyond what is actually the property, and so when we're considering what's going to go on here, we have to know that the property line is not as far away from the opening as for the waterway as is the opening. So this is fairly significant in understanding the detail as we move forward. Next. I'm just looking back here from about where that was, because well, we're looking to the south with the previous photo. Looking to the northwest is important too, because all of this area is part of the future improvements. Next. For proposed improvements. This is going beyond the pilings, which are under my feet, and we can see there's more concrete some pilings that are in disarray. This is the whole area of improvement. And as we go, we see that there's a bit of lawn there on the far to the right of those, the shrubbery that's evident is a lawn for the two residences that are part of the adjacent property to the south. Next. That's a little bit further down there, but again, just to give you an idea of the extent of the concrete and the disarray of the area. Next. We've continued on down. You can see that there is continued to be the condition of what the docks look like, what the bulkhead looks like. And I've worked my way about halfway down. I can see the tent is a lot closer. I'm working along the south property line, which is extensive. Next. I'm all the way out now at the far end of where the improvements are suggested. I worked my way out quite a bit of ways. You can see that in the middle of the photo, the roof of the restaurant where we started out. So we're becoming all along this one slip of the cove, one side of the cove. Next. Again, work my way back just to give you an idea of the nature of what's here. There's Phragmites, there's some invasive species, non-natives. There's also a good deal of vegetation along the way. All of this will have to be removed for the work that's being planned or being proposed. Next. Again, I'm back by this. I just wanted to show that what we're dealing with here is a very short distance. These hedges that are planted along there are probably fairly close to the property line, that we can comment on that. But we do not have a great deal of space working from the adjacent southerly property to the bulkheads. Next. All the way back, this is just looking back across here because this retention and what's happening here, working my way back up what is now you can see that it's a declining ramp that works its way down for boat launches from the elevation of the parking lot above. So this is all part of an area that may be affected by the work that's being proposed. Next. Now I came back and with some help, I stood right on a property line marker, and the property line basically passes through that Chevy that you see there. So some of what is to the right down further, I'll have another photo, is not part of the property in question, the parcel being discussed. Next. So from here, these fish boxes are off the property. So we don't have, it's important because the work that's being proposed for this area does not extend out as far as that, even though visually it's an opening. It's not an opening. It's all of that land is not on the parcel that we're discussing within the property lines of the parcel we're discussing. Next.
That's the last one.
That's the last one. Thank you. That's it. That's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. Oh, thank you for that thorough report, Ed. Appreciate that. Board members, any questions for Ed? No? Okay. Then let's go to the applicant's agent. Good evening. Is it David Grimes? Do we have her?
Yes.
Are you there?
David Grimes, owner. Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead. You can go ahead. You can introduce yourself, and then I'll swear you in, please, David.
Sure. This is David Grimes, owner of Cove Marina.
Okay. David, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Okay. The plan really calls to replace 375 foot of existing timber bulkhead that has failed and a hazard. No matter how you look at it, we're raising the elevation approximately 5.5 feet in order to get above the flood elevation in this area. All of our construction work is to be done on Cove Marina's property. We are 90% of the work will be done via barge and crane. Minimal excavation behind the bulkhead. Installation of new sheet pile, timber piles, everything spec'd out in the plans, revegetation upon completion, and installation of a split rail fence on the property line in order to delineate the property line, keep Westlake's customers on their property and my customers on mine, along with keep people out of the vegetation that's been submitted on a re-veg plan and agreed upon by both property owners.
Okay, thank you, David. This will come up with Brian Franken down the road, but as you probably know, one of the concerns is how your property line gets so thin there out at the end, and the graphics that were submitted on the cross-section were not really accurate with regard to your 9-foot top of bulkhead and the adjacent, the grade there. So, but I will leave that until after Brian Frank does his presentation, and then maybe you two, you can address how you plan on handling that issue. Otherwise, I have no questions at this point. Ed, do you want to start off any questions for you, Ed?
I have one simple question, just clarification.
Okay,
so the 2020 application approved 243 feet.
Right.
And this one is for 374 feet. Are we just adding more to the previous, or is this a new project?
Brian, you could.
It was submitted. Brian, do you want to handle this, or you want me to handle it?
Yeah, let's let Brian handle. Just answer the approved section, Brian. Maybe you could just highlight for us, Brian, if you would, with your cursor.
So this includes the previously approved section. Is that right?
No, the 375 applies, Brian Frank for the planning department.
Okay.
The 375 that's noticed in the application is just for the southern bulkhead. The western bulkhead was the subject of an earlier permit that was conducted administratively by the planning department. That's separate linear footage. That's not included in the project description or what you're being asked to consider tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Roy. Thanks, Brian. Ed, go ahead. Ed, do you have a question?
Relative to Brian's comment, I want to know that in the previous approval, the administrative approval, was the details that have been submitted for the bulkhead similar? Were we approving before that this detail we're seeing now for this bulkhead was part of that previous approval? Is that what's going to
the answer? I apologize, David. If you want to answer that, go ahead.
Yes, what we did is we submitted plans to reconstruct all bulkhead details in one package. When I discussed this with Brian Frank, he thought the best move for me to expedite the west and northern sections of bulkhead was to separate the south wall out and just resubmit as a second application.
So that detail that we're going to follow now from the south wall is going to then continue along the west wall in the same detail for that entire additional couple.
No, if you look at my engineered plans on page C2, section, there's a cross section, typical batter braced bulkhead. Because of my limits on property behind the bulkhead, I'm unable to put a conventional tieback system in, and in order to stay on my property, we're putting batter piles seaward of the bulkhead, as opposed to a typical dead man and tie rod system.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess my question still is, though, when we get on the west side of the property, if this was a finished product, are we looking at the same height to the bulkhead?
Yes.
Because that bulkhead is going to be one height, as is indicated on your structural drawings. Is I guess it's C1. So we see that as one structure, both west and south, right through.
Yeah. Yes, upon completion of the project, everything's top of bulkhead's the same throughout.
Yeah. So what will happen to the launching ramp that you have there? That system going to stay intact?
The travel lift system will stay intact because the travel lift is essentially a crane with 4 pick points. All that would have to happen is I'd have to reset cables, but it would work on the new elevation the same way it does on the existing.
So the area that area immediately then to the west of that launching traveler launching system you have there, would that be getting additional fill then to bring that up to make it at the same height as adjacent. So that area that I had a photo of would then be filled. Just want to make sure
Yes,
that.
it would. It would prevent any water, any storm water that's on the property now from being pitched towards the harbor.
Okay,
It
so
would
then
contain any runoff onto my property.
yeah, so then just following up on the comments made by the chair, we have approximately 7 feet from the bulkhead to the adjacent Westlake property, and on your drawing that was submitted, which is what is this called, the grading and planting plan. I don't know that that's an angle that it's accurate. It seems to me that we only have a 2-foot change in elevation there. If the adjacent land is 4 feet below, it's going to be a steeper angle to achieve what you have there. Can you comment on that? Do you think that's fact, or am I misreading this?
Yes, the drawing was just a real rough drawing. If you were to do a topo of Westlake's property, their property actually comes up from the property line towards the house. They go from elevation 5 to probably 7. And I've spoken with him, and when it comes to the grading portion of this, I'm gonna extend and match his grade to where we're both comfortable with it.
So they on this drawing that you submitted, we see a property line, and we see that there's a biolog that's meant to be the determinants of the planting, but in fact, you're saying you might change that and go on to the adjacent property. You might be.
What I would do is,
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I would do is I would soften that grade anywhere available. The biolog, the 12-inch diameter biolog is there purely until vegetation stabilized and there's no risk of erosion. I put that in just because I did not want any sort of soil mitigation off my property.
Yeah, so that raises the question, though, that did you have a prearranged agreement with the neighboring property owner to wind up putting this onto his property? Is that going to be? We were just wondering if that's the future. Okay, so you guys will have some sort of agreement that this grade will change, but it'll change in a comfortable way, a more comfortable way than possibly this drawing, right?
Yes. And again, like I said, with the topo of Westlake, a lot of his runoff and the way his property's pitched right now, he sheds his water off the top of my bulkhead. I'm looking to mitigate that entirely.
Okay, so the other thing that a question for me was that access to this for the work you're going to be done is going to be largely, as you say, from the water. And you're proposing that dredged materials that you have proposed, I think it says 1,200 yards of dredged material, will go behind this bulkhead to help create this slope. So I guess my question is to you, is 1,200 yards adequate to complete the project as drawn, number one? And then number two, is the materials that you're taking out going to be adequate to create the structure that's necessary? In other words, will this be a pile of slop that just goes off someplace? Dredged materials from what you do. What do you propose to do to make this stable enough to complete the project as drawn, to have this planning so that it doesn't become a pile of soup? I mean, is that what we're going to see get taken out when we get the dredging done? Is it going to be adequate for the planting?
What you're going to see is when it comes out of the water, you're going to see wet material. It's going to be dewatered on the property, and then used. The 1,200 yards was calculated on the volume of dredging for the entire bulkhead, the 243 foot on the western side and the 32 foot on the north side. That's a cumulative dredge volume. Obviously, where I'm going to be revegetating it, it's going to be dewatered if I have to add sand or organics to it to get it to where vegetation will hold in it. That's my goal. I don't want to put anything there that I'm not going to be able to plant in.
Yeah. So I guess my question then is that, David, is that if you do have to bring in these other materials, something more granular, something more structural, how will you access that? Not from the water. You'll have to have access from the landward side through an agreement with the adjoining property. No.
No, I'll have access. Yeah, I'll have access when it comes to that point. I'll have access down the property line, and that will all be done with with skid steers and mini excavators. It's not, I'm not looking to put full-size construction equipment down there.
So the follow-up question then is for the planting to be completed as drawn and hopefully is accepted by the planning department, and you guys work together on this final planting plan. You'll also have access on the landward side to complete and maintain, install and maintain what's going on here. Okay, because when you look at the drawing, you realize the property line is only 7 feet and there's a severe angle. You wonder, what are the logistics here? How do I access this? How do I maintain it? So those are my questions, because I see this long line and I realize that you have a very difficult tactical problem to get this created. I mean, get this constructed the way you propose. That's all.
Yeah,
that's what
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that, Ed. Board members, any other questions for David? No? Okay, then let's go to the planning department. Brian Frank. Good evening again, Brian.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. Brian Frank on behalf of the planning department. I don't know if you need to re-swear me in.
No, for the night right now, so then we're good for the evening, I believe.
We're good.
Yep.
Okay, so just to review a little bit, Member Johann's photos are really excellent. They really provide a comprehensive view of everything in the property. And just to review, this portion, the western portion of the bulkhead, was the subject of an administrative natural resources special permit over the winter that allowed for the reconstruction of the bulkhead and an increase in its elevation to 9 feet above sea level. That's shown on these Delandrew engineering plans as well. So the plans, to circle back to a question that was asked forward, the plans that were submitted in over the winter are identical to the plans that you're reviewing now. The permit that was issued for the western bulkhead was limited to the western bulkhead. This is a cross-section of the western bulkhead that shows a traditional anchoring system with tie rod, dead men, and lay logs. And this is the plan view that shows the anchoring system. And this is what was specifically referenced in that administrative permit. This is the section we were discussing before. These are the batter piles that will provide the structural stability from the water side, because the property line is only in some places 7 feet away from the bulkhead and doesn't allow room for that traditional anchoring system. As you can tell from Member Johann's photos, there are so many of them. I'd like to go back to a good one. But the top of the bulkhead elevation, I mean, it's even hard to say what the top of the bulkhead elevation is now because it's so bowed. But in a lot of places, it's lower than the grade, the grade that's adjacent to it here. Bringing it up by 5.5 feet is a significant change to the property. The planning department doesn't have an objection to it from an environmental perspective, and part of that proximity to the property line and the challenges in stabilizing it were among the reasons why the southern bulkhead was not a good candidate to include in the administrative permit. It really required or warranted more eyes, even more opportunity for public discourse. The revegetation plan is really a landscaping plan. I don't have any objection to the use of rugosa rose. It's not native, but this is not really a buffer. The purpose of this vegetation is to stabilize the slope. So the use of beach grass and salt spray rose is acceptable. It's a good use to a high exposure site where you're really not. This narrow strip behind the bulkhead is not really intended to be a buffer or a natural area so much as an area that needs the soils stabilized. I do think if there's dewatering of the dredge sediments. It's in the best interest of the applicant to have that included in the permits. We don't have that in our plans now. So some details about the dewatering, where that system is, where that dewatering is going to be contained. If it's a dike and weir, whatever the system is that ensures that it's clean water that's being returned to Lake Montauk. I think that's important to have and get incorporated into the consideration of the permit now. Another important consideration that is included in the mitigation, both in the administrative permit over the winter and recommended now, is the use of a weighted turbidity curtain as the dredging of the sediments is being conducted adjacent to the old bulkhead. That minimizes the amount of suspended sediments that are introduced in the water column and limits the turbidity specifically to the work area.
Brian, on the turbidity curtain, I don't have the plans in front of me. It should show it on there, but that's a standard protocol for a DEC dredge plan, which I already have.
Right. It's become fairly standard on. It's become fairly standard on town permits as well. I don't remember seeing it on the plan, but we don't necessarily have them on the plans that we approve in conjunction with maintenance dredging or bulkhead repair anyway. But a weighted turbidity curtain has become a fairly standard practice for bulkhead. Not all bulkhead reconstructions and dredgings, but many of them. And this is a place where it's appropriate. I don't know if
we have them. We have a couple 100 foot on site that we use for other construction purposes there now, so that's not an issue.
Does the board have any questions that I can answer about the application?
Brian, I walked the property also, and my concern is the increase in the elevation of the 5.5 feet. When you go down, like where in member Johan's photos, you had the outdoor eating area of the Westlake Marina, and the tent that was up there for this time of year. It seems like that elevation is going to be kind of looming over the Westlake Marina property in that area where the outdoor dining occurs and those other two houses that are there. Once all this gets done and raised up, is visually.
Well, it will be several feet higher than the existing grade. If that area is about 5 feet above sea level now, that's going to be several feet lower than the top of the bulkhead elevation that's proposed.
I think you're going to end up having a swale. When you say, David, between the kind of a swale going, I mean, I like the idea, obviously, pitching away from the water, but with the neighboring property, you might kind of have a swale right about at the property line, I'm sure. I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, we discussed it, and it's going to be graded, like you said, in a swale manner, so that his water has a place to go. But I'm not flooding him, and it's controlled throughout. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Brian, what is that? What we're looking at in the foreground of this photo? I don't have the survey up in front of me now. Is that about a 5? That 2 by 10 we see at the bottom of the photo, the top of the bulkhead cap. Is that about 5 feet? Would you say, Brian? Do you have any idea from your survey?
That concrete?
Yeah, or the concrete, or that. Yeah, the top of that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm guessing maybe 6 feet.
I think it's narrower than that.
In elevation, I mean height. Like, is it like 5.5 feet? I'm guessing maybe.
The survey says closer to 2.7, 3.0.
Oh, wow.
No, Brian, that's soundings that mean low water on the bulkhead. The survey's kind of hard to follow, but I've done the same thing.
Maybe
the numbers I'm reading are behind the bulkhead, so that's why I assumed they were elevation.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Average
Okay.
elevation throughout is about 4.5 to 5.5 feet on that top of bulkhead right now. The 4.5 being on the northwestern portion of the property. The south bulkhead ranges about 5 to 5.5 feet.
So David, your new top bulkhead, your piling cap at the bulkhead is probably going to be at the top of those piling that we're looking at, plus or minus, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the topo line that's outside of the property line, these telephone poles are on the survey, and there are some spot elevations that are in, roughly this area here that look like this area is about 3.5 feet above sea level. At least that's the way I would read it. Then it does drop down a little bit lower in this area, and again, it's hard to say what the actual top of bulkhead elevation is, but it does look, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but to me it does look like it's around 3 feet.
Okay. Any other questions, board members?
Yeah, I have one. David, is there any intention to add to any of this work additional dock spaces? Is this just to stabilize this line in order for continuity to make sure that you don't lose your perimeter? Or is there any effort here that any of this is going to increase the number of dock spaces?
No, there's nothing there that's going to increase the number of dock spaces. Currently, we're going to do the bulkheads right now, and then we're going to evaluate dock space. But I've got to stabilize my property before I move into anything that way. And the bulkhead's not changing its location, so I'm not gaining or losing anything in that manner.
Yeah. Okay. And then, and Brian, just as a small point, in the TAM, it says that the NRSP was in March 2020. I think it's 2021, isn't it? Didn't we do this last March?
Well, 2020 is a blur, so I could check that. That might have been a mistake. Yes.
So I'm just saying, just for to get things right. It seems like it's 2021 to me. But anyway, small point. Thank you.
Okay. If board members don't have any other questions, LTV, Michael, do we have any callers?
Yes, Chair, I do see one caller. I can unmute that caller.
Please do.
Phone ends in 1367 or 57. I'm sorry, I'll unmute that now.
Yes, good evening, members of the board. Hello?
Hello, caller. Could you please identify yourself and then you can be sworn in?
Yes, this is Chris Miller.
Oh, okay. Okay, Chris. And could you give us your name, your address, and your affiliation with the project?
Yeah, I'm Chris Miller, one of the owners of Westlake Marina.
Oh, you're the adjacent. You're the adjacent neighbor and we're looking at your property on the right side of this photo on the screen, I guess. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Unless you're an attorney, Chris, I'll have to swear you in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Evening, members of the board. Thanks for having me speak. So we have concerns about the height, the 5.5-foot increase. Actually, I'd like to start by saying I would love to see that bulkhead rebuilt. It's been in need of rebuilding for a very long time. It's been very dilapidated. I think that the idea is fantastic. But I'm concerned mostly about the height and the problems that it's going to create. And first of all, like obstruction of our view, it's like the height of a person. So kind of like building a wall right in front of my view of the harbor for my residents and for the restaurant. And drainage issues. Some of your members talked about that swale that's going to be created. Now, in the picture you've got right there, there is a grade that goes upwards towards those hedges. But as you get down to the east towards the restaurant where that tent is, it's fairly level. And at the property line, it is actually 3 feet or less in some cases. It goes down to like 2.5 feet. So my biggest question really is I don't understand the need for raising it that high and creating these problems. You know, I could see on the west portion of the bulkhead why he would want to raise the grade to match the street level. But in this case here, I don't really see a need for it, and especially when it's going to create problems for me.
Brian, would you mind pulling up the survey, please, so we have that to reference? Okay. Any other comments, Chris?
One of the issues really is that the designation of approximately 5.5 feet, you know, is kind of it's a little vague. First of all, I've had discussions with Dave about it, and we've come up with, like, you know, we put markings on pilings, and every time we discussed it, the mark would be in a different location. So it's very difficult to decide. You know, he says elevation 9 is what he wants to raise the bulkhead to, but there's no bulkhead on the east side of Montauk Harbor that's even that high. There's no need for it.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
The reason you're not getting straight height answers out of me, my permits are at elevation 9. I will guess at existing bulkhead heights, but I'm not a licensed surveyor, and I'm not going to speak as one in that manner. So I'm not going to say something's at elevation 3 without doing my field homework that way.
Well, it does look like the topo out at the very corner at the upper right is 3.3 feet. That might be in the bottom of that swale, I'm sure, that exists where it's collapsed under there. So you might be up at 6 feet, but I mean, I don't know what to say. We basically just have to take your comments. Go ahead, Dave. You have another little bit of time. I mean, if you need another comment.
It was Chris who was commenting.
Oh, Chris, I'm sorry. Chris, please.
Yeah,
sorry.
So like, I mean, I would like to see, so my bulkhead is about 3.3 because I know that on the survey on the northeast corner, there's a 3.3, and that's the height of my bulkhead throughout.
Yeah.
And I don't, it really, the water, you know, when we have storm surges, there's very, very few occasions when the water does come over the bulkhead. And when it does, it's not a problem. I mean, the water comes up by a few inches and it goes back down. There's no damage that occurs. You know, all these years, and I've been here since I was a kid, and I haven't seen an increase in the occurrences of the water coming over the bulkhead, and there's really very few times when it does. So I don't really understand the need for it. It does have a tremendous impact on my property, and the other thing is that even if the water did come over the bulkhead on that side, it's not going to flood his property. It's just going to flood my property. Well, I mean, it'll flood a few feet of his property, but it doesn't have an impact on any of his structures or anything else. So I would like to see the height of the bulkhead reduced dramatically to almost to what it's existing right now, to have more of a continuity along that edge of the property, and not put like a 5.5 or 6 foot wall around my property, because that's part of the value of this property is the view that it has. And then when it does rain, and then what's going to happen with the rainwater? It's going to flood. It'll flood my parking lot and my backyard.
Well,
it's not going to. It needs to have a place to go. Every bulkhead in Montauk that I could. I mean, I can't say for a fact that every bulkhead, but every bulkhead that I can think of slopes towards the water. The grade goes towards the water, so the water has a place to go. You can't trap the water behind a bulkhead. It doesn't make any sense. So
we can't.
And also, well, I'm sorry. But and when the project does move forward, I'm concerned about obstruction of the restaurant operation. If it was, it needs to be done in the wintertime and completely revegetated before the restaurant's reopened. And I don't want to see any damage to my landscape as well.
Right. Okay, Chris, let me jump in here because we're running out of time here. We've given you about 6 minutes. But let me just say this, Dave, we can't, this is a hearing. We're not making our decisions, but the written record is going to be open. And I wonder if I imagine other board members have a concern about the same thing, and you're supposed to control your stormwater runoff off and not have it go to your property. And you were talking about filling in and working with your neighbor, with Chris, but to fill on his property, you actually need an NRSP to do any filling in that area, as I believe I'm correct there. So I wonder, David, there's going to be a time when the written record's open. You may want to consider rethinking of possibly tapering from, if you look on the survey where it's concrete platform on the lower left and you've got all that property to deal with your drainage, and right where it makes that jog, you get into this very thin strip of land. And I wonder if you don't want to consider stepping down a couple of feet there so that you can deal with this better, because again, you are supposed to control your stormwater runoff to your neighbor, even if it is only a 7-foot bit of property there. And again, it's not even noted the distance between the blue line of your property and the bulkheading, which it would probably be good to see that in a revised graphic as well. And we can't spend all night on this, but the written record would be open, and that's your call to make, because this board will be making their determinations based on whatever is submitted, and also will take into account any public comment. So go ahead, David. Then we have to move on. Go ahead.
You got it. I'll let you guys go. I have no problem putting drainage in that contains my stormwater on my property. And Ed, you and Brian, Frank, and Roy, I know all of you know my capabilities with that. But I also do want to go on record as saying my neighbor's not going to dump his stormwater off my bulkhead. As a marine contractor, that's something that deteriorates the integrity of the bulkhead, and like you guys said, it's got to be kept on your own property. I'll address you guys' concerns, and you'll be hearing back from me. I have no further comments. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let's leave it at that. Unless we have anyone else in the public LTV, or unless board members have other comments.
No, Chair. There are no other callers. Okay.
Board, are you okay closing this one out and leaving the written record open as we normally would? Board members, any comments?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I would only say that Mr. Miller's concerns should be addressed in some way, perhaps even visually. If there's a 5'9" difference in height between the proposed bulkhead and his 3.3, he said 3'3" bulkhead, that's 5'9" wall. If that's his concern, he should be getting that back to us in some sort.
Yeah, I think I agree, and that's why I mentioned that. Yeah, and he may want to consider tapering it down as well. And I think I agree with you, Ed, and I'm sure David's listening. David, we are going to, I'm sure all board members are going to want to see some revised drawings from your engineers showing proper dimensions and cross sections that make sense with you, whatever drainage you want to put in or propose, and whatever height differences you want to make adjustments for. Okay?
You got it. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Ed, would you mind closing us out, please?
Yes, I will, Mr. Chair. In the application of Cove Marina Llc, 364 Westlake Drive, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-12-01-04, I would like to make a motion to close the public hearing, but keep open the written record until 2 weeks after the transcript of this meeting has been posted on the town website.
Now, second.
I concur.
I concur.
And I concur as well. Okay, thank you, David. Thank you, Brian. Ed, thanks for your work on that field report and all too. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, we'll move on now to our work session. We'll go all
Actually,
the
we
way
go right
down.
to minutes.
Yeah, we go right to the minutes because we're Stephen and Wendy Gottfried. We're moving down to the first of the resolution. So I have read the minutes, the draft minutes of September 28th, and they look fine to me. Do we have a motion to approve those draft minutes?
Yeah, I too read the minutes and they look good to me, so I will make a motion to approve the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals minutes for September 28th.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur.
And I concur as well. Thank you, Terry. Now we'll go to the resolutions. We'll start off with Stephen and Wendy Gottfried at 346 Kings Point Road. And this is in board member Delene's district. Roy, do you have that in front of you? Do you want?
I do,
I have it.
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is an extension, a resolution extending determination. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution extending determination for Stephen and Wendy Gottfried, Suffolk tax map number 300-023-03-35.
Second.
Concur.
Tim, you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll concur.
Okay, and I concur as well. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay, next we go to AFMP LLC at 404 Old Montauk Highway, Montauk, tax map number 300-22-1. And Terry, you want to pick up on this one, please?
Sure. This is an extension of time, if you recall, for AFMP on the Old Montauk Highway, where they got a modification at the request of the Suffolk County Health Department to move the septic system. And so I make a motion for AFMP LLC at 404 Old Montauk Highway, Montauk, tax map 300-022-01-04 to approve the extension of time.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur.
And I concur. Thank you, Terry. Next, we'll move on to Joseph M. Tantillo at 39 Gainsborough Court, Montauk, tax map number 300-19-4-27.2. And Terry, I believe this is in your court, please.
Yeah. Okay. This was to allow, if you recall, on Gainsborough Court, allow an existing patio and roof overhang to remain within side yard and pyramid setbacks. And I believe you will recall this one. There was some discussion as to where the garage and the patio and how it may have or may not have been shifted, but regardless, it ended up due to an irregular property line that the variances became necessary after construction. But this was a unanimous approval by the board. I make a motion in the matter of Joseph Tantillo, tax map 300-19-4-27.2, located at 39 Gainsborough Court in Montauk, to approve the resolution as written.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur.
And I concur. Thank you, Terry. Next, we have Gail Schoenfeld at 6 Livery Lane, East Hampton, tax map number 300-184-5-43. And Tim, would you pick up on this, please?
Sure. So board will recall that this was a matter relating to an affordable accessory apartment in a basement and a 50% variance. There was also some issues with number of occupants. And ultimately, the board was in agreement to deny the relief that was requested. We all concurred on that. So make a motion in the matter of Gail Schoenfeld at Suffolk County tax map number 300-184-5-43. And that's at 6 Livery Lane in East Hampton to approve the determination as written.
I second that.
Concur.
You concur.
And I concur as well. Thank you, Tim. I think next I'll jump, just to, before we do Nigel Curtis, I'll jump. We have Patricia McCarthy. And And that had to do with simply Scribner's error, I believe.
Yes, there was a Scribner's error on the one we adopted last week. So this is just taking out the error. So it just needs to be adopted in its current format.
And this is, thank you, Councilor. And again, this is Patricia McCarthy, 2017 irrevocable trust at tax map number 300-31-3-24. And this is at 21 Reuter Place. And Terry, would you pick it up?
Yeah, that was mine, but I don't have it in front of me. Give me.
I do, if I do have it here.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, and this had to do with allowing the application, it was allowing decking in the outdoor shower shed, stone patio, landscape wall, landscaping, fencing, etc. An extension to a deck addition, AC screens on the porch, screens on a property containing freshwater wetlands. And this was voted on unanimously, and therefore I'm to approve this, and therefore I make a motion with regard to Patricia McCarthy, 2017 irrevocable trust, to approve the determination as written.
Second.
I'll second that.
I concur.
I'm sorry, somebody else seconded. I'll concur.
Okay, thank you all. Okay, next we have Nigel Curtis at 393 Cranberry Hole Road in Amagansett, tax map number 300-128-1-28.2. Council, maybe you can just give us a 30-second update in case many of our fans are listening and they want to know what we're doing this evening with Nigel Curtis, if you please.
Sure. As the board knows, we discussed the what's titled the revised draft EIS, which is the component that the board needs to draft with regards to the final EIS. So all the you have received the entire packet, the notice of completion of the EIS, the final EIS, the draft, the revised, the comments, all those make up the packet. What is before you is the resolution stating all of the steps that you've taken in doing the SECRA, and that it authorizes our secretary to file that with the state and proceed then. Once that is filed, then within 30 days, or actually we have a little bit longer because of when election day comes in, but we will then have the schedule of discussing and hopefully coming to a conclusion on the SECRA findings on November 9th, and have that in a written format, because there are requirements that those findings be written, and adopt written findings the following week on November 16th. So that is our schedule with regards to this.
Okay, thank you very much, Nancy Lynn. So I have the resolution to provide notice of completion of final EIS in front of me for Nigel Curtis. I'm not sure if board members have any comments at this point. I don't, except for to say, this is in my Amagansett district, as you know, to say that I appreciate all of the work that the planning department, and specifically Brian Frank, has put into this, and Nancy Lenthiel as well. Thank you all for your work on this. I have gone through the compilations and what we have to date, and I am fine personally myself moving forward with this resolution. Any comments, board members?
Only kudos to Brian for putting that document together. It was great.
Okay, well then I will make a motion with regard to Nigel Curtis at, again, tax map number 300-128-1-28.2, and to approve the resolution to provide notice of completion of final EIS as written.
A second.
I concur.
Okay, are we good on that, Nancy Lynn?
Yep, that's what we needed.
Okay, thank you as well. Appreciate that. Okay, Council, you all finished? Do you have anything else, Council?
That is all I had on our docket for tonight.
Okay. Great work, everyone. Much appreciated. We got through the power outage as well. And thank you, LTV and Laura and Brian and Tyler. I think Vice Chair Deline, we just need a motion from you, if you please.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I therefore make a motion to close the public hearing in the work session of the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals for Tuesday, October 5th at 9:23 p.m.
A second.
I concur.
I'll concur.
And I